House Republicans want to join us in the Fiscal Reduction Act, I'm happy to talk to them about the tax cuts they have pending in Ways and Means that add to the deficit. I'm also happy to talk to any Republican who voted for $2.5 trillion of tax cuts unpaid. So the problem I have is when people vote for that, bust the deficit on tax cuts for the wealthy, and then come and say we're doing too much for Head Start and child care and cancer research, because that's what we're talking about. They've taken the smallest amount of spending, do nothing about taxes for the rich, and they want to cut the smallest amount of spending. That's not serious fiscal conversation. Anybody in DC will tell you, you cannot get on a better fiscal path by going after these domestic programs. They're the smallest portion of our budget. It ain't gonna happen. It's not serious. Even cutting it 30% doesn't put you on a better fiscal path. So let's just get real. It's not about that.
All right, one more. So the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, says that he's not going to take a salary during the shutdown. Does the president plan to pause his salary also?
Look, I'm glad that the speaker's made that statement. By the way, members of Congress have to get paid constitutionally, so maybe he'll put it in a sock drawer. I don't know, but they have to get paid during a shutdown. That's theater. That is theater. I will tell you, the guy who picks up the trash in my office won't get a paycheck. That's real, and that's what makes me angry.
Yeah, Peter, expectations.
If I can ask you very briefly about, we've seen this show before where it goes down to the wire and then at the last minute something happens or several days pass before anything happens. Can you just talk about fundamentally the impact, even if this were to be resolved, and playing this game where it goes the last minute before there's a short-term spending bill, how that sort of impacts the way our country runs? Because a lot of Americans see that and they know that that's not the way it can work in their own homes.
You're right, and you're right. I mean, we have time with the president say there's nothing inevitable in politics. We don't have to go down this road. House Republicans don't have to take us down this road. So you're right. There is always a chance that people can do the right thing and the government remain open or have a quick reopening.
But even getting to this place, there's already a ton of money lost. Right?
Not a ton of money lost. The confidence in government is what I worry about. People watching this, the dysfunction sowed, and I think there are a small amount of people who know that. You know, it's the carelessness by which people's like, oh, this shutdown is not much of government. Well, you tell people who live paycheck to paycheck that. I know it's not popular to defend federal workers. I know it's not. But a lot of them live paycheck to paycheck. They get repaid. What are they supposed to do in the meantime? What are they supposed to do? And then people can't get government services. You go sign up for WIC. You finally convince his mother it's the right thing to do because a lot of families are embarrassed about taking aid from the government. You finally convince this young mother to go do that. Not available. Confidence lost in government. It's one more knock on democratic institutions. And that worries me.
As we get closer to a shutdown at the end of the week, does it remain the case that President Biden is unwilling to meet with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy as he's suggested he would like to do?
It's not unwillingness. We've talked. We talked a lot. The president talked a lot to Speaker McCarthy. We got a deal. This is the easy part. The debt deal was 2.5 years. You know what we're talking about? 47 days to keep the government running, to give Congress time to work on full-year spending bills. This is not hard. This is just not hard. And by the way, every day I read some other reason why they can't vote on the Senate bill, the Senate bipartisan bill. It changes every day. So there's not an unwillingness. We've had this conversation. The speaker wanted to set top lines. We set them. Now he needs to talk to whomever he needs to talk to in the Republican conference and live up to that deal.
What will be the engagement from President Biden to lawmakers, particularly as we get closer Saturday, tomorrow?
You're talking about a president who was a former senator for 36 years. He has close relationships on the Hill. He stays in dialogue with Congress. Clearly, there's going to be an uptick in that as we are led down this path by House Republicans, and that'll continue. The president is constantly updated on what is happening, but I'll tell you, we're at the 29th. We have until midnight tomorrow. What needs to happen is the one corner out of 5 who is having problems with their votes and their strategies need to find a path to meet the other four corners at the deal we all signed up for in early summer.
That's great. Director Young, can you talk a bit more about the impact a shutdown will have on the crisis at the southern border?
We asked for $4 billion to help deal with migration challenges at the border. You wouldn't know that to hear what Republicans talk about. If border is an issue for House Republicans, where's the dialogue on what the president asked for? To help with enforcement, to help with transportation costs, to help with detention capacity. You know, I've done this a long time. This is just a new interesting time in our political atmosphere where we can't get Republicans to really engage us on more money to help control migration issues at the border. Almost no dialogue, no interest in taking on the president's request, no interest in dealing with the fentanyl issues that we asked for more money to deal with, to put more equipment, to find fentanyl coming through. So there's serious and there's not serious. This president asked for money to help deal with issues that hurt people. Disaster, Ukraine, and border. We appreciate the Senate meeting us to make sure Ukraine aid continues, disaster aid continues. But let's not forget, this president asked for money to deal with the situation at the border, and you're absolutely right, during the shutdown, not only do we not get the $4 billion we asked for to help, we're asking CBP agents, ICE agents, to go without pay. How is that helping?
Thank you, Director. I've been speaking to many mothers who rely on WIC for food for their babies, and they don't follow the ins and outs of politics and whether a shutdown would be the fault of Congress, the White House, the President. They just can't believe that this country's leaders would allow babies to go hungry. So what would you say to them?
I go back to my answer earlier. I worry about people's engagement and thought about their government. It worries me tremendously that people will show up on Wednesday or Thursday trying to decide whether they were going to even apply for this aid. Because a lot of people don't trust, like their friends tell them to go get this, and they're like, oh, it's going to be difficult, a lot of paperwork. So it takes convincing for people to go seek this aid. And then to be told, never mind, government's closed, shut down. They don't follow the ins and outs. It's a pox on all of our houses. That's why 4 out of the 5 corners are trying not to go there. We're doing everything we can to plead, beg, shame House Republicans, do the right thing, don't have this happen. The cavalierness is what gets me. I've heard people say in the Republican House conference, oh, shutdown's not that bad. It's not like the debt ceiling. Well, you go tell people who cannot pay their daycare bill. You go tell people that. You go tell men and women in uniform that they don't get a paycheck when they show up to work every day. You go tell that mother that she cannot get formula after having had to be convinced to even give government a try. It's the cavalierness that really gets me. And you're right. It sets an expectation for how people deal with their government throughout their lives. And it's something we should work really hard to avoid.
To follow on that, could you clarify the total number of workers that would go without pay next week and how many of them would still be required to show up to work?
So in civilians, 1.5 million, about 800,000 of them would be accepted and have to show up to the office. As you know, depending on how long shutdowns go, people can be called back into work if their job and their duties start to fall into one of the categories that's accepted. So there would be changes in those numbers if a shutdown would continue.
And what about the breakdown for the military's 1.3 million active duty troops and the reservists plus DOD?
Right, it's a little over $2 million, 2 million people who serve, who are all expected to show up to their duty stations.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Director. You said this shutdown could be enough for democratic institutions. What about the international reputation of this country when it seems like the United States is going from one major fiscal crisis into another?
I think you just answered it. This country, we owe services to the American people. We talked a lot about one of those in WIC. We talked cancer research. But our diplomatic efforts, this president has worked harder than most to hold alliances together that represent democratic institutions, the Western Alliance, and ensure that the world knew America was back. I do believe we will continue to do most of our missions as best as possible. We will show up where needed, but it certainly makes that more difficult the longer and longer this goes on. But in a very short-term situation, I think we will remain in the same with the same posture across the world. Now the question is how we're viewed. It is not the shining example we want to portray that we continue to have fiscal crises because other world leaders look at that. But I'm still hoping, I'm still remaining an optimist that we have a day and a half to work out in one corner what is needed to take the deal that is laid before them by the United States Senate. So there's still a chance.
Thank you, Director. Given that we've seen in prior shutdowns that some of these workers that have to go to work without pay, including in the travel industry, FAA, and others, that they might report or call in sick in greater numbers, do you have any guidance around that or any estimates as to how that might affect the shutdown period?
Look, we don't shut down often. I know it may feel like it because we talk about it even if it doesn't happen. You sure? So it doesn't happen often. So there aren't numbers. We certainly have anecdotal evidence that happens on occasion. And it goes back to what I talked about earlier. People make decisions that are best for their families. Thank you. Thank you. Have fun. I hope not to see you all for a little bit.
Thank you so much, Director Young. I do want to add to something that the director said, which I think was really important about how this affects families. I think I've seen on some of the cable news networks this morning, if it was this morning, that you've seen like federal workers being interviewed and members of the military. And you see people, I think one interview, someone was crying about how this is going to affect the shutdown that Republicans in the House are bearing us to is going to affect them. And this is real. This is real life changes and real life impact on people across the country. And there was one military personnel who was interviewed who said that one of the reasons that they went into the military is to have that stability, right? Is to make sure that they have a stability in their life. And when you have one of the 5 groups who are taking away that stability because of a political stance, because of their chaos within their own caucus, and they do that to a military member, personnel who is really, truly putting their lives on a line for this country and making a commitment to this country, and they're saying that they no longer have the stability that they thought the military would bring them. I think that's devastating. And that's, this should not be partisan. This should be bipartisan. This is supposed to be the basic duty of Congress to do this, to do their jobs. And it is going to have, if we do indeed have a shutdown, it is going to truly hurt some of the people that we rely on every day, as well as cutting some key programs that families need. With that, Colleen, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Can you say anything more about what the president's plans are going to be this weekend in the face of the shutdown? What's he going to be up to?
So I can say that the president's going to be in Washington, D.C., and he's going to continue to remain in touch with our team here is going to continue to remain in touch with congressional leaders and the members of both parties. Certainly, he's going to get updates on what's happening on the Hill. But again, if this is going to be the extreme part of the House, Republican, is going to be their shutdown. I don't expect any travel outside of D.C. from this president. But of course, if that changes, we certainly would communicate that. But the president will be here. He'll be getting updates from his team and the team more broadly, as you saw. The director was here, and also our Office of Legislative Affairs is going to stay in close touch with congressional leaders on the Hill.
Will you be meeting with anybody in person this weekend?
No, I don't have any meetings or to read out as it relates to Congress. But what I can say, this is something, and we've said it over and over again, and it needs to be repeated. This is something that Congress can fix. This is something that those extreme Republicans in the House can fix. They know how to fix this. We just heard the process that the OMB director went through, right, earlier this summer, late spring, on helping to make that bipartisan deal become a law. And so we should not be here. She shouldn't have been here at this podium talking about a potential shutdown. It should not have been this way, and they can fix it.
On the auto worker strike, so it's expanded now, and I just wondered if the White House is concerned about broader economic impact of the strike as it sort of wears on. I think it's 2 weeks.
So a couple of things, and I've been asked this question about the potential impacts. Look, we always take a look at what a major economic situation the potential impacts could have, certainly in our economy more broadly. But I will just go back to what I've said. As it relates to the shutdown does not need to happen. These programs that families need should be continuing. We should not be in this position that we're in. This is something that Republicans in Congress and the House more specifically are heading us towards. And you saw there was a chart that was up when we were speaking, and Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats, House Democrats, the president, we're all on the same page. We're all on the same page here. And for some reason, extreme House Republicans refuse. They refuse to get on board here. And as it relates to the shutdown, should not be happening. This can be avoided. They can fix this if they choose.
Kareem, I hear what you're saying, and
About what?
about Republicans,
Yeah.
And that they have to fix this. It's their problem. It's not ours. And that's exactly what the White House said before the deal was struck about raising the debt ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, you guys weren't going to touch any kind of negotiation because you said it was solely up to House Republicans, up to Congress to raise the debt ceiling. But then the president did intervene to avoid the U.S. defaulting. So I'm just trying to understand at what point would the president intervene to avoid a shutdown?
So I understand your question as well. Here's the thing, and I think Director Young did a really good job laying this out. What we are talking about is a bipartisan bill that became law. That's what we're talking about, something that became law, that was agreed by the 5 sides, right? The House Republicans even themselves, 2/3 of them voted for this. This is law. This is an agreement that was already made, that multiple conversations were had about this. This should be simple. This should be easy. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about something that already existed not that long ago, that they all literally voted for in the House and in the Senate in a bipartisan way. Something that I've said before, that's what Americans want us to do here in Congress and in the White House, right? In the federal government, to get things done in a bipartisan way so that it helps American families. And what they're doing, they can fix it. There's no conversation that needs to be had because they literally can fix this. It is their chaos. They can fix this. And what they're putting at risk is our economy, our national security, as we just talked about, the military personnel. It's we have been able, the president in the last 2 years have been able to get our economy back on track, right? We've talked about 13.5 million jobs. We've talked about unemployment being under 4%. And what they're doing is incredibly irresponsible and it is reckless. So that's the difference. When you're asking me, you don't quite understand and we're trying to figure out what we're talking about, we already made the deal. That's why we keep saying a deal is a deal. And it's not just, it's majority of Congress that agrees with us, right? When you think about what the Senate actually moved forward and kept their deal. When you think about 77 senators who are moving forward, who voted to move forward with their CR, they are keeping the deal. We're talking about a small fraction of Congress, and that's reckless. That's irresponsible, and that's why we're saying it is not it's not on us to fix. It's not on this president to fix. It is on Congress to fix, and it's not just us. I started a briefing listing out quotes from Republicans in Congress themselves. All right, I'm gonna keep on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. On China, can you clarify if the administration is stepping up engagement with a goal towards a Biden-Xi meeting on the sidelines of APEC in November, including whether there are any plans for Vice Premier He Peng or Foreign Minister Wang Yi to come visit in Washington or meet U.S. officials?
I don't have anything to lay out for you on any meetings or any potential meetings as it relates to the president and our president and President Xi. The president spoke about this very recently and his expectations to have a meeting. Don't have a location for you, don't have a timeline for you at this time. We're expecting the president, as he said, is expected to do so. Just don't have anything to share. And once we do, we certainly will share that with you.
Just follow up on that. Just a few days ago, Wang Yi seems to suggest that the onus of creating the right environment for a Biden-Xi meeting lies in Washington, to promote cooperation. A summit that promotes cooperation rather than provoke confrontation. How would you respond to that?
I mean, we've been very clear. We're not looking to have confrontation with China. We're looking to have competition, and that's what the president has shown these last 2 years. The president spoke about this. He's looking forward to having that conversation with President Xi. I don't have anything to share with you at this time, and I'm just going to leave it there. Go ahead.
Thank you. Does the president plan to take up McCarthy's offer to meet, and does the White House see any value in that?
Look, I'm going to be very clear. The person that McCarthy, or the people that McCarthy needs to talk to, is his own caucus. That's who he needs to have a conversation with, not the president. The president had multiple conversations with Speaker McCarthy very early on to get this bipartisan deal that 2/3 of the House, Republicans House voted on. The conversation is not between the president and McCarthy. What I'm saying very clearly is the conversation needs to happen between Speaker McCarthy and his caucus. That's the fix. That's the chaos that we're seeing, and that's where he needs to focus on.
And how would you describe the president's relationship with Senator Feinstein in recent years? When was the last time they spoke to one another?
So I believe the president reached out back in August. They missed each other, and so the president had a conversation with her chief of staff. That is the last time that the president had reached out. I mean, the president spoke to this, very, I think, very deeply, right? And just moments ago when you all watched his remarks, and they were very close friends. They served together for over a decade, maybe 15 years in the Senate together, and he saw her as a close friend. They, one of the things that they worked on that is an issue right now across the country was assault ban weapons, right? That is something that they worked together on in 1994 and actually saved lives for those 10 years before it sunset in 2004, right? So there's been many things that they've been able to work on together, and so they find, and even as president as well. And so he sees her as a dear friend. It is a sad day certainly for us here and also for her family and clearly for the state of California. And I'll just leave it there.
We just heard Director Young saying this is not hard, but Speaker McCarthy clearly is finding this difficult. Can you give us any sense of how President Biden sees the situation that Speaker McCarthy is in? Does he think that the Speaker is in a tough spot? Have you gotten the sense that there's any sense of sort of sympathy towards Speaker McCarthy, or is it all pure exasperation?
Look, I'm not going to go into the president's feeling about the speaker or his situation currently as Speaker of the House. What I can speak to is what we've been saying all along, which is a deal was made. The president had, as you all know, and saw this happening when these conversations were going on in person and trying to get that bipartisan deal very early on in the summer. And what the president believes is that many Americans are going to be hurt by this. Many families are going to be hurt by this, by something that extreme House Republicans are barreling us down through, right? They're heading us down a road that is unfortunate, that is reckless. And that's what the president is concerned about. He's concerned about the American people. And this is something, again, they can fix this. They can.
Can you confirm when the two men last spoke?
I don't have a date or timeline of when they last spoke. What I can say is that clearly the OMB director, our Office of Legislative Affairs, has been in regular touch with congressional leaders on this for the past several weeks, several months, and I just don't have a conversation to confirm with the speaker.
And just in the coming days, in the event of a government shutdown, does the White House believe that the president has a responsibility to offer any words of reassurance to people in the country who will be affected, will be worried about the situation?
So look, I don't have any previews of any remarks that the president's going to make, but you can either tomorrow or any upcoming days. But of course, the president is always, when it comes to situations like this, you can expect to hear from him directly in the days ahead. I just don't have a date to speak to at this time. And the president, here's the thing: the president's not going to stop working. He's going to continue to work, and he's not going to stop delivering for the American people in the event of an extreme Republican shutdown. You're going to hear from the president. I just don't have anything to lay out on a specific date or time. But of course, the American people are going to hear from him. And
Just on the auto worker strike, has the president spoken to automakers after he said he supports a 40% pay raise for UAW workers, or just even broadly after his visit to Michigan? We understand from sources that the chances of a deal in the near term have been complicated by the president's remarks about him supporting a 40% pay raise.
So just want to give some clarity. So first, the president's senior advisors, they've been in touch with all parties. I'll let you know if there's any conversations that the president has or to read out with the automakers more specifically as it relates to the 40%. Look, he believes they should get a significant raise. That's why the president can keep saying like a record profit should lead to record contract, right? He believes that the UAW workers should get a fair share for profits they help create. And so the president has been really, really clear about that. But as it relates to any negotiations and what they are asking for, he wants to make sure that he leaves that up to the UAW leadership. And ultimately, again, members should be able to receive a fair and just deal. And the president's going to be consistent about that. He has said that that recently when he was in Michigan, when you saw him on an active picket line, he was very proud to be there in solidarity of the union workers. And so that is something that he has said throughout his career, and he'll continue to be very clear about that.
So just on the automakers part, you said his team is constantly in touch, and we've known that. Are there any specifics or conversations after his visit, specifically after those comments?
Well, they've been in regular touch. I don't have, like, if they talk today or on Tuesday or Wednesday, but they have been, the senior advisors certainly have been in touch with all parties. They are not, I want to be clear, they're not